Story: my husband, aged 34, and I, a 26-year-old woman, initially met during a pivotal moment in my life. At the time, I was on a journey to turn my life around, having dropped out of high school years earlier but later deciding to return to earn my credentials. Simultaneously, my husband worked in construction, and our paths crossed one evening as I was leaving night school and he was waiting for his cousin. His cousin's delay prompted him to seek my assistance in locating him, sparking a conversation that eventually led to a bond between us. Concerned for my safety due to the late hour, he generously offered to drive me home, a gesture I appreciated and accepted. This act of kindness became a recurring theme, allowing us to forge a connection that eventually blossomed into a romantic relationship. Throughout my educational journey, he remained a constant source of support and encouragement, going above and beyond by aiding me in gaining admission to college and covering my tuition fees. Following my college graduation, we tied the knot, and I secured an internship that propelled me up the corporate ladder. As my career advanced, I landed the position of executive personal assistant, working closely with one of the company's top executives. Despite the physical distance resulting from our demanding careers, we remained committed to making our relationship work. However, complications arose during business trips due to my boss's inappropriate behavior. Initially, it began as innocent flirtation, evolving into more direct advances that caught me off guard. While I admit enjoying the attention, his forthrightness surprised and frightened me. Our interactions extended beyond business trips, with romantic getaways, extravagant gifts, and occasional financial deposits into my account becoming the norm. Despite the understanding of our committed relationships, our affair became a discreet exploration of fantasies. Recently, my boss arranged a trip to Mauritius to celebrate the success of a major project, with promises of promotions for both of us. I deceived my husband by fabricating a business trip, claiming it held the potential for a promotion. Despite his initial happiness for me, upon my return, I found packed bags by the door along with divorce papers. To my shock, the locks had been changed. Unable to reach my husband, I waited anxiously at the front door for hours, growing increasingly upset. Eventually, a friend came to pick me up, and I confided in her about the bewildering turn of events. In a fit of anger, she called my husband, friends, and even his workplace. He showed up at my friend's house, and a heated argument ensued, primarily focused on his actions and how he was treating me. After the argument subsided, I gathered the courage to ask him about the ordeal. Without uttering a word, he opened his phone, revealing incriminating pictures and videos of my boss and me behaving intimately. I was in a state of shock and disbelief when he asked about the duration of the affair. Attempting to offer an excuse, I faltered, but he repeated the question with an unsettling intensity foreign to our interactions. Overwhelmed with emotion and on the brink of tears, I finally admitted that the affair had been ongoing for 4 months. This confession ignited his anger, and he appeared on the verge of tears himself as he admonished me. He questioned how I could betray his trust and jeopardize our family's future, shattering my heart. Overcome with guilt, I found myself on my knees pleading for forgiveness. He informed me of his desire for a divorce and then left. Despite genuinely loving my husband and being committed to making our relationship work, I can't envision a future with anyone else but him. What I did was purely for excitement and the prospect of a promotion. How can I rebuild his trust? What can I do to persuade him not to go through with the divorce? We've been through so much together, and ending it like this is hard to accept. My boss is a married man, and he was aware of my marital status as well. It wasn't a case of workplace harassment because I welcomed the attention from him, finding our relationship exhilarating. There was no emotional connection in our affair. My husband is the only man I love and will ever love. I got caught up in the thrill of it all. The photos and videos of my boss and me were sent to my husband by a mutual friend who happened to be honeymooning in Mauritius at the same time we were there. I had no prior knowledge that they would also be in Mauritius. I hope that clarifies things. My husband was dead serious about proceeding with the divorce. He showed no inclination to work things out, even when I proposed seeking the help of a marriage counselor. I couldn't comprehend how he could be so quick to give up on our life together and disregard my love for him just like that. It wasn't until my friend provided a new perspective that I started to understand. She made me realize that he had wanted to leave our marriage all along, and I inadvertently gave him the excuse he needed. She encouraged me to fight with everything I have and make him understand the pain he's caused me. I'm fully committed to doing just that. Update: unfortunately, I've been let go from my job. My boss explained that my messy divorce situation might implicate him, especially since he's in line for a promotion. It was kept hush-hush, and my boss provided some compensation before parting ways. Currently, I'm in the job hunt while also battling for alimony. It's been a while since my last update, but I managed to secure my share of the house and alimony from the divorce. Financially, I'm doing all right. My ex put up quite a fight to keep the house, but the court ruled fairly. I recently found a new job, although it's not as good as my previous one, and the benefits aren't great either. Coupled with the fact that my alimony will run out in less than a year, it feels like I'm living on a tight budget. Looking back, I don't believe my approach was entirely wrong, considering I was the one who betrayed our marriage. Admittedly, I was vengeful and spiteful, but marriage is a legal commitment, and my ex had obligations towards me as well. Nevertheless, I wish I had handled things differently. Perhaps we could have resolved our issues, and my life wouldn't be as messy and lonely as it is now. There was a time when we were a lovely, wonderful couple deeply in love, unable to be apart. Story: to a few years ago, my husband expressed a strong desire to start a family. Despite not feeling ready, the pressure got to me, and against my better judgment, I agreed. Last August, we welcomed our first child into the world, an adorable, funny little girl whom we both adore. We decided that I would take a year off work to be with our daughter. However, a few months into it, I began to resent this decision. I missed my freedom, disliked being a stay-at-home mom, and felt generally unhappy. One night, I went out for drinks, only the second time in about 7 months. I started getting attention from guys, and although I forgot my wedding rings at home, I didn't mention that I was married. I arrived home intoxicated, and our earlier argument continued. The following day, I realized I was dangerously close to betraying my husband, if not physically, certainly emotionally. I confessed, but all he wanted to discuss was our disagreement from the previous day, ignoring the fact that I came home drunk. Approximately a month passed with no significant changes, and I concluded that I needed some time off. I embarked on a month-long vacation with our daughter to my hometown. This trip marked the first occasion for our family to meet her. However, things took a scandalous turn when I spotted my ex walking down the street. He resides nearby, just down the street from my grandma's house. He's the only man besides my husband whom I've ever genuinely loved, but perhaps the nostalgia of a youthful summer romance at the age of 16 paints everything in a favorable light. Returning to the episode, we arranged to meet, and at this moment, I'm truly in search of a friend, and he's willing and available. There we sit on his couch, tears streaming down my face because my life feels like a complete mess. He comforts me, and we share a kiss, which escalates into a passionate make-out session. It feels inappropriate immediately, and I yearn for my husband, wishing he were the one holding me. However, he's 1,000 miles away, and I wasn't feeling loved at home anyway. The next day, I confessed to my husband. I'm still uncertain about our marriage, but I knew I didn't want to be with that other guy. My sole intention was to show my husband that he could lose me. He's clearly upset, mentioning that he can't even bear to look at me on Skype. Filled with anger, he sends me a meme that reads, "If you love somebody, you don't mess around with someone else." This is where I make a terrible decision. I return to the other guy's house, craving some affection. This time, we engage in sexual activity twice. Around this period, my husband warns me that if I see that man again, our relationship is over. So, I keep it a secret. 2 to 3 weeks later, I return home, and my husband is genuinely making an effort. Everything seems perfect, and there's a sense that we can repair our relationship. He asks me, "Did you do anything else with him?" Initially, I lie about it, but then I decide to come clean and tell the truth. He feels betrayed all over again. "I'm deeply sorry, and I truly regret everything." He expresses a desire to work things out, and I'm doing my best to give it my all. However, I feel like he's using me as a verbal punching bag. I understand that just being present and not leaving is his way of trying. I only revealed the truth to him the day before yesterday, so I recognize that he needs more time. I guess the question now is, what should I do next? Alright, that proved to be an enjoyable narrative. Now, let's shift gears to another thrilling narrative. Stay tuned and let's delve into it. Story: I recently navigated a challenging life situation that has left me feeling unexpectedly saddened. This concerns my past relationship with Bonita, my ex-girlfriend, and myself, Louise. Approximately 2.5 years ago, Bonita and I initiated our relationship. Our first encounter took place when she was cutting my hair in a beauty shop complex where she rented space as a successful cosmetologist. At that time, I was 27, working as the operations manager and head designer at a landscaping company. My journey with the company began at 16, and over the years, I successfully steered the company through tough times, expanding it to 4 times its initial size. Due to my contributions, I was granted 25% equity and operational ownership by the owner. Bonita and I connected on various levels. Both being small business owners and hardworking individuals, we shared a similar mindset. However, I was transparent with Bonita about my reluctance to commit to anything serious due to my dedication to growing my business. Despite my reservations about marriage, Bonita believed in it under the right circumstances, as dictated by our community and religion. Our families, both Hispanic Americans with shared Catholic faith, had some interactions at church events and community festivals, but we weren't close before our relationship. Initially, we spent 1 day a week together, which gradually increased to 4 or 5 nights a week in the final months. We believed it was crucial to have some time apart to focus on our individual pursuits and sustain the spark in our relationship. Summing up our time together, I'd describe our relationship as happy. We connected mentally and physically, sharing similar personalities. Bonita lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with Katrina, another cosmetologist who had previously shown interest in me. Despite my initial concerns about Katrina's lifestyle, it never influenced Bonita. Fortunately, Katrina moved out 6 months ago, relieving some tension in their friendship. Regrettably, our story took a turn, leading to the end of our relationship. The incident that altered our dynamic occurred during a period when we believed some time apart would benefit us. Despite the challenges, I continue to reflect on the positive aspects of our time together, cherishing the happiness we experienced. I reside in a repurposed commercial building situated at the back of my parents' property. When my dad purchased our first house, he aimed to acquire as much land as possible for planting vegetables and fruit trees. Homes in our neighborhood were quite affordable back then, with some priced under $40,000. Our house, bought for less than $50,000, came with 4 empty lots, 2 on each side, where homes had been demolished. Consequently, we have an extensive property, and our backyard is remarkably spacious. The property behind our house, on the adjacent street, used to belong to a utility company that no longer utilized it. The old brick building on the property, constructed solidly by the Works Progress Administration almost 100 years ago, was designed to handle heavy loads. When the utility company vacated the land and building, my dad acquired it at a low cost. He then handed the building and land over to me, and I transformed it into an open floor plan with a loft and an internal garage. It stands as the most impressive building in our city neighborhood. Additionally, the landscaping across our entire property is exceptional, aligning perfectly with my passion. Our neighborhood has undergone significant gentrification, resulting in our homes now being worth many times what my dad initially paid for them. I apologize for the lengthy explanation, but I am incredibly proud of my parents' achievements. In September of last year, my dad, brother, and one of my cousins traveled to the Hero area to visit my grandparents, assist with some house repairs, and spend time with our extended family on my dad's side, all of whom live there. We had been planning this trip for over a year, and each of us had arranged time off from work. While excited about the trip, I was concerned about being away from Bonita for such an extended period. We decided to stay connected by talking, texting, and using FaceTime every day to alleviate our loneliness. The trip turned out to be fantastic, and time passed quickly. Upon my return, Bonita and I resumed our relationship, which continued to grow stronger. I even started reconsidering my views on marriage. Several weeks later, I noticed that Bonita appeared to have a fuller figure than usual, and her face had a flushed look. I found her even more attractive, but when we were physically together, she would become unusually warm or overheated, something she had never experienced before. She also became more proactive in seeking physical intimacy and spending time together. A couple of weeks later, Bonita approached me, informing me that she had taken 2 tests confirming she was pregnant with my child. I was surprised, as I had always been careful with protection. She presented studies indicating that protection was not entirely reliable, with failure rates ranging from 2% to as high as 78%. I felt joy about becoming a father and Bonita's life partner, though I had not initially planned for this. We spent the remainder of the night discussing it, and the following day, I informed my parents. My mom was disappointed about our premarital intimacy but thrilled about becoming a grandmother. She suggested considering marriage to make things right. My dad was understanding, asking if I was happy with the news, to which I replied yes. Later, I accompanied Bonita to inform her parents, and their reactions mirrored those of my own parents, questioning us about marriage. Bonita then shared the news with her extensive network of over 50,000 friends and followers on Facebook, receiving over 2,000 likes, loves, and supportive comments. Bonita had connections with most of the people in our parish, our community, and individuals she had met at her beauty shop. Our relationship was thriving, and we grew even closer as we prepared for the arrival of our child. Although we continued to live separately, we were making plans to have Bonita move into my home before the birth. We intended to cover the remaining 3 months of her lease. Then unexpectedly, Katrina showed up at my workplace and asked if she could talk to me because she had a notification to deliver. She expressed her belief that Bonita may have been unfaithful to me while I was in her mojo, and that her baby might not be mine. Given the strained relationship between Katrina and Bonita, I initially didn't take her words too seriously. According to Katrina, 2 brothers, whom we'll call Chris and Nick, visited the salon late one afternoon for haircuts. They were from Greece and had been in the country for 3 weeks, helping their uncle and aunt with their recently opened Greek restaurant. It was a Friday, and they were scheduled to return to Greece on Monday, so they wanted to get haircuts before leaving. Katrina mentioned that since it was getting late, the brothers kindly invited both Bonita and me to dine at their uncle's restaurant for free. We accepted the offer as it was dinner time, and we hadn't had lunch, and we were famished. Katrina explained that they drove separately to the restaurant, and upon arrival, the entire family gave us a warm welcome, insisting that we order whatever we liked as their treat. She spoke highly of the family, praised the restaurant's appearance, and described the food as delicious. After the meal, we all gathered in a bar area where Chris and I began discussing the waterfront, something he wanted to see before leaving. I offered to take him there. I asked Bonita and other family members if they wanted to join us, but the family mentioned they were occupied with restaurant duties, and Bonita said she wanted to continue chatting with the family and then head home. According to Katrina, she and Chris were away for approximately an hour and 15 minutes. She dropped him off around 9:00 p.m. when the restaurant was closing. The parking lot was empty, and Bonita's car was not there, so she didn't think much of it. The following morning at the beauty shop, she and Bonita briefly talked about how good the food was and how pleasant the family had been. This was unusual since they had become somewhat distant due to their strained relationship. A couple of weeks later, Katrina relocated her business to a different beauty shop. Now here's where the surprising part comes in. Katrina mentioned that she was recently out with some women at a bar. They had a few drinks and started gossiping. Someone suggested they have a discussion about their best and biggest experiences. In this conversation, each woman reveals the name of the man who was their best lover and the name of the man who was their most well-endowed lover. I didn't realize this was a topic when and talked about, but I asked Katrina why she was sharing this with me when Bonita wasn't present. She explained that one of Bonita's cousins, whom we'll call Patricia, was at the gathering, and Patricia is still good friends with Katrina. During this conversation, as they went around the table and shared their answers, Patricia disclosed that my cousin Bonita outdid all of us in the biggest category. According to Patricia, Bonita once mentioned being with a Hulk-like guy from Greece years ago who had a double-digit measurement when hardwood. She continued saying that Bonita had mentioned he was not very smart but had the physique of a statue. According to Katrina, Bonita thought this man was so unique that she invited him for a second night of intimacy and then disappeared from his life. This revelation left me feeling hurt and concerned, but I still didn't understand why Katrina was sharing something that had happened years ago involving Bonita. Katrina then pointed out, "Louise, don't you see this didn't occur years ago? It happened while you were in Hermosillo, and that man was Nick." She described Nick as a tall and Herculean figure, but not particularly intellectual. Katrina also mentioned that the others in the group, including Patricia, were unaware of the dinner that she and Bonita had with the brothers. So, she pretended to laugh it off but felt she had to inform me about this, believing that I should be aware. She went on to say that Patricia had told the group that Bonita had once mentioned that no one could compare to me, Louise, and that I was her best lover and her eternal love. At this point, I had heard enough and thanked Katrina for sharing the information. However, in the back of my mind, I wondered if she might be lying out of jealousy, attempting to sabotage our relationship. That evening when I went over to Bonita's place, we spent a pleasant evening together as usual. I didn't bring up anything with Bonita because I didn't want to create turmoil if Katrina's story turned out to be a fabrication. The next morning, my curiosity got the better of me, so I tried calling the phone number of the brother, but the call failed. It seemed that the number was either disconnected, or I had dialed it incorrectly, or there was some other issue. As the morning progressed, my mind was filled with the information I received last night. Around 1:30, I decided to visit the Greek restaurant, thinking I might have a chance to speak with the uncle and clarify my situation. I went to the restaurant, enjoyed a delicious meal, and as I was finishing up, the uncle approached my table to express his gratitude for choosing their establishment. He then noticed my landscaping truck and asked if I was in the landscaping business. I confirmed that I was, and he expressed interest in getting an estimate for landscaping work on their building. After completing my meal, we conducted a walkthrough of the property. Once we finished, I told him I would return with a detailed estimate. Then, I asked if I could set aside my business inquiries for a moment and pose a personal question. He agreed, so I proceeded to ask if he was the uncle of Chris and Nick. He confirmed this and mentioned that they had returned to Greece. I inquired whether he had met them during their stay, and I explained that a friend of mine had and I wanted to reach out to Nick to ask him something. He inquired about the nature of the question as he could pass the notification along to Nick. I explained that I wanted to inquire if Nick knew a woman named Bonita. The uncle's face brightened, and he said yes, he knows Bonita, and he had a fondness for her. She dined here one evening with a friend, and Nick went on a couple of dates with her the weekend before he departed. He mentioned that Nick believed they were in love, but Bonita had been ignoring his calls and messages ever since he returned to Greece. Naturally, I felt quite sad upon hearing this news. The uncle then proposed that we call Nick, and he led me back to his office, dialing Nick's number on speakerphone. Before I could explain further, Nick answered promptly and exchanged some words in Greek with his uncle, engaging in a conversation that I couldn't comprehend. Afterward, the uncle turned to me and asked, "How do you know Bonita, and could you convey a message to her for Nick?" I responded by expressing my reluctance to spring this information on them. I assured them that I wasn't angry but rather saddened by the situation. I then disclosed that Bonita is my girlfriend. The uncle appeared genuinely surprised, his face reflecting shock at this revelation. He proceeded to converse with Nick in Greek for several minutes before slowly ending the call. He conveyed his apologies and stated that Nick was also sorry for this situation. Nick had no knowledge of my existence, and he expressed regret over that fact. The uncle shared that Nick was upset that Bonita hadn't disclosed her relationship with me. He mentioned that Nick was heartbroken because he had hoped to develop a romantic relationship with her. I inquired whether Nick had mentioned any intimate involvement between them, and the uncle hesitated briefly before saying, "I'd rather not say," and added, "I extend my heartfelt apologies to you on behalf of Nick, myself, and our entire family." That evening, I had a conversation with Bonita, asking her if she had been to the Greek restaurant, mentioning that I had been there myself. She seemed surprised and inquired if the food was good. I confirmed it was and proceeded to mention that I had run into Katrina, who mentioned that both Bonita and she had dined there for a complimentary meal. Bonita recalled the occasion, explaining that they had received the free meal as a gesture of appreciation for their excellent work in washing and cutting the hair of the owner's relatives. Perhaps I could have handled the situation with more tact, but I decided to be straightforward and asked her about her relationship with Nick. Bonita seemed puzzled and responded with who? I clarified, saying, "Nick, you know who I mean. Did something happen between you two that weekend?" She appeared bewildered and agitated, responding with, "What are you talking about?" I pressed on, saying I spoke to Nick on the phone today, and he admitted to everything that happened that weekend. In response, Bonita denied any wrongdoing, stating that they hadn't done anything beyond her giving him a ride around town after dinner, which raised my eyebrows. I questioned her about why she hadn't mentioned this earlier and expressed my doubts. I also mentioned the claim that she had referred to Nick as her most well-endowed lover and me as her best lover. She vehemently denied making such statements, accusing someone of spreading falsehoods out of jealousy to break us apart. I then broached the topic of a deoxyribonucleic acid test, to which Bonita quickly agreed. I suggested making the appointment the following day, but she insisted on waiting until after the baby's birth. I agreed not to push the issue further, but I explained that our relationship would be strained until then, and we wouldn't be moving in together. This made her cry, and I assured her that I would support her throughout her pregnancy, regardless of the circumstances. She tearfully pleaded, "Why won't you believe me? I love you more than anything and would never do anything to hurt you, I swear." The following day, Bonita made a Facebook post claiming that troublemakers were attempting to sabotage our relationship and that I had developed cold feet about becoming a father. She requested prayers and received over 1,700 likes and numerous prayer and hug emojis as responses. Upon discovering this post, I asked her to take it down, as it contained inaccurate information, and she promptly deleted it. Later that night, Katrina posted on Facebook, asserting that nobody was causing problems for Bonita. Rather, Bonita was concealing the truth about our relationship and the baby. This post garnered reactions such as shock and anger emojis from those who read it. Upon learning of this post, I requested Katrina to remove it, and she complied. However, by that time, word had already spread throughout the community, suggesting that Bonita had been unfaithful, and there were doubts about whether the baby was mine. From that moment until the baby's birth, our relationship remained strained and distant. Nonetheless, I continued to provide support and even purchased over $1,400 worth of baby items like bassinets, strollers, and tubs. When the baby was born, I was present at the hospital and had the opportunity to hold the beautiful child, which brought tears to my eyes. As I was passing by the hospital station on my way out, the head nurse informed me that she had the birth certificate ready for me to sign as the father. I discreetly informed her that I would sign it after we had completed the deoxyribonucleic acid testing. She expressed surprise and offered profuse apologies, explaining that Bonita had instructed her to enter my name on the certificate above the father's signature. She assured me that she would promptly rectify the document. Bonita declined to undergo deoxyribonucleic acid testing at the hospital and expressed, "Don't you love your baby? He's yours, you can see it in his facial features. He adores you, and I love you more than anything. Please don't make me go through with the test, it would break our trust and ruin our family." I explained to Bonita that I needed certainty, but she remained steadfast in her refusal. That night, she posted a photo on Facebook featuring her and the baby, with the baby wearing a shirt that read "Daddy's Boy." The caption stated that Daddy loved the baby but had reservations about parenthood. She asked for prayers. The post quickly received over 500 responses before I noticed it, and I called her to request its removal, which she did. My boss recommended taking legal action to compel a paternity test, and he connected me with an attorney who initiated the process. I didn't want it to come to this, but Bonita left me with no other option. During the court proceedings, the judge inquired about our reasons, and my attorney explained that I sought custodial rights to the child if it was indeed mine. Bonita appeared in court without legal representation and offered to voluntarily grant me 50-50 its custodial rights without the need for a test. As expected, the judge asked my attorney if there were doubts about paternity, to which my attorney replied, "Yes, Your Honor, and we can provide witnesses to testify to that fact." The judge then issued an order for a paternity test and expressed hope that everything would work out for both of us because the baby deserved a loving mother and father. In the interim, Bonita gave the baby my first name, hyphenated my middle name with my last name, retaining her maiden name as the baby's last name. So now, the baby bears my full name. This might prove confusing for him. The scheduled date for the test came and went without Bonita's participation, leading us to return to court. This time, the judge ordered her to undergo the test or potentially face contempt of court. Finally, she agreed to take the test. I already had a deep sense of this in my heart. I thought that finally resolving all of this would bring me relief, but instead, I'm overwhelmed by a profound dark depression like I've never experienced before. I've lost the love of my life and the child I wished were mine. Now, some individuals in our parish and community are suggesting that I should step up, marry her, and be a father to that little boy. I wish I could be a better man and do that, but I simply can't. Our priest had a private conversation with me and shared a Bible story about a man, possibly named Jacob or Joshua, who went off to battle and returned years later to find that his wife had given birth to another man's child because she believed he wouldn't come back. Instead of anger, he professed his love for his wife, took responsibility for the baby, and they lived a happy life together. He told me this story to illustrate that relationships in such situations can work, but he respected any decision I made. I told him that the man from the Bible was a good and brave soul, but my circumstances were different, and I could never trust Bonita again after what had transpired. Our priest understood my perspective. Despite the truth being revealed, Bonita continues to make posts on Facebook featuring herself and the baby, mentioning me. In her latest post, the baby is dressed in a one-piece outfit with Junior on it, implying that he is my namesake. However, since the truth emerged that I am not the father, only a few people, mostly her family and closest friends, respond to these posts. I believe that, like me, people are concerned about her mental well-being. I've had another conversation with Nick through his uncle, informing him about the paternity test and the likelihood that he is the father. Nick mentioned he attempted to contact Bonita, but she has now blocked him. He plans to return next month for a 3-week visit and hopes to meet with her. Nick wants to be a responsible father to the child and hopes to relocate to the America. I advised him to first proceed with a deoxyribonucleic acid test before making any further plans. He mentioned he has consulted with a Greek attorney who indicated limited options as Bonita is an American citizen. Nick intends to speak with an attorney when he arrives here. I genuinely hope Bonita comes to her senses and gives Nick the opportunity to be a loving father and assists him in obtaining citizenship. He appears to be a good person with a supportive family. I wish only the best for Bonita, her son, and Nick to provide a positive start for baby Louise. I invested $1,000 in Bitcoin through PayPal and deposited another $1,000 into a savings account via PayPal as a gift to mark his birth. I understand it may not have been the wisest choice, but it brought me a sense of contentment given my circumstances. Lastly, I treated Katrina to lunch and expressed my gratitude for revealing Bonita's affair. While I may not always approve of Katrina's actions, I will forever appreciate her role in my life. That's all I have to share, and I appreciate anyone who took the time to read my entire narrative. May God's blessings be with everyone.